It is another edition of Riding Home. This time, the roles are switched. Dylan Weber is at home. Dean Legge coming from practice. Dean, how was it?
It was hot. It was definitely hot. 97 degrees by my thermometer right now. So noticeably hot. Yeah. Noticeably hot and noticeably full of defensive linemen, which is what I wrote about on the practice report. Go to listen to dogpost.com. Go to read on dogpost.com. But they're just loaded up with defensive linemen, man. And I also took a harder look at the Vanderbilt game today, and I'm not so sure they played as lousy on offense as people thought.
Well, what makes you say that?
Well, first of all, they had 4 drives in the first half, and they scored on 3 of them. So, I mean, there's really not much else you can do when you eat up one quarter of the half with touchdowns. And then they only had the ball one other time. That mattered. I mean, they got it as the half expired. That doesn't really count as a drive. And I believe on that, I'm trying to remember all of the drives off the top of my head, and that's harder to do while you're illegally driving with a cell phone in Georgia. But the other one was just a punt where they only got 13 yards on 5 plays. So it wasn't, he didn't score a touchdown on every single drive in the first half, but I mean, after a while, I don't think people on Dawg Post were necessarily blowing it out of the water. I know after the game, y'all were saying, hey, this could have been better. Maybe should it have been better? I think in the moment it's easy to ask that because when you quote unquote only score 30 points on Vanderbilt, there's something to that, I guess. But I mean, damn, they got to the red zone 2 other times and either fumbled or turned it over on downs. So they scored on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their, by my count, 10 legitimate drives. I think that's right. That's hard to replicate in football. I mean, and by the way, they're 25-1 when they score 30 points or more. So under Kirby, so they did what they had to do. They won the game. I don't know if it was on the road as much as people thought it was, but
yeah, some air quotes there.
On offense.
Well, you say that they're 30. What was it, 30-1, or 30 something like that? 25-1, 30 when they're
25-1 when they score 30 points.
Who was the one loss?
It was the Tennessee game in 2016 when they had the game won and lost.
Interesting. That would not have been my guess, but
I mean they only punted twice.
On Saturday?
On Saturday, yeah.
Well, I think
touchdown, punt, end of half, field goal, downs where they shot the gap, the kid from Vanderbilt, punt, fumble, goal, field goal. I mean, I have to say, I'm not sure how much better you can get.
Well, I think the major concern, first of all, is the short yardage situation. People are always going to be upset when Georgia has this, unfathomable offensive line, this god-tier offensive line, and they don't convert on 4th and short, 3rd and short against a team like Vanderbilt.
I have a comment on that. Keep your thought up. I want to go back to that, though.
I was just saying people are always going to be upset with that because they expect them to always get it with that offensive line, especially against a team like Vanderbilt.
Far be it for me to defend, the coaching staff at Georgia. They have vast more expertise than I do, and they certainly have more money than I do about talking about football. And they just know more. But I will say that what happened on that play was that the defender shot the gap, and while it worked on that one play, it didn't work the rest of the game. And if you were to play 80 snaps, you get the one play that people remember right, and you get bludgeoned the rest of the time. Well, that's no good. And really, Vanderbilt, to me, looking back on it, they did not play quite as disciplined as I thought they did or should at the time. They were guessing a lot. They shot gaps a little more than I would have. The defensive end did not set the edge at all. I mean, he just ran up the field one time, and DeAndre just gashed them. And it's no wonder that Georgia wound up with 330 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost 5 yards total on offense. So, I mean, the short yardage thing is correct. You don't want that to happen. But then you circle back and say, well, how many times are these guys going to shoot the gap?
Right.
What happens when what happens when you shoot the gap and you guess wrong?
Well, DeAndre Swift will let you know.
With his 150 yards. So the details matter all the time, but sometimes we focus too much on the details when trying to explain situations. The other thing I think, and I know it came to mind when me watching the defensive line today. They really played well, I thought, last week. You're not even talking about quite 100 yards. I mean, it was 100 yards rushing, but probably about 25 of those were on the last drive of the game, or last two drives of the game, when the game was totally in hand. They make the stop on downs on the last, play of the game, so to speak, for Vanderbilt. They played about as well as you could. The thing that cinched that game too, man, was in the third quarter going into the fourth quarter, Vanderbilt had 4 straight drives that were 3 and out. They had 1 negative yard. I mean, Georgia's going to win a lot of games that way. And the other thing on top of that, as I continue my monologue, if the Vanderbilt running back is one of the top 4 running backs in the league, which the coaches think he is, doesn't the defense deserve a little more, credit than the Georgia fans are so tough on their team sometimes.
For sure.
I really mean that. I think generally speaking, we are too rough on Georgia. I have to say, not we the fans, but we just people who are not there. That was a more decisive win than maybe people are looking at it as.
I don't think people.
I thought it was more. I'll say this. I was at the Clemson game. Georgia was way more decisive in their win in the first half than Clemson was in theirs. I mean, Clemson was gifted 15 points by Tech. They were sloppy. Georgia was not sloppy at all.
Yeah, I don't think people argue that it wasn't decisive. I don't think it was ever close to being a close game, even, because they had those 3 touchdowns to open the game. But people are concerned right off the bat, just the gut feeling when watching that game was to be concerned about the short yardage situation, which we've covered. That it happens. They shoot the gap, and it happens. But then also that it just slowed down. They had the 3 touchdowns on 3 drives, and then they didn't get in the end zone again. And I think people wanted them to find the end zone at least one more time in the game. And I think they probably should have. But once again,
I know this is the family broadcast, but I will say this. When you go out 3 Friday nights in a row and you score 3 touchdowns in a row, the rest of the time that you're out and about and you're not scoring touchdowns, you're going to be wondering what's wrong. And, when you're kicking field goals, there ain't nothing wrong with field goals sometimes, man. I mean, there's not. And there's a little too much Munson in this fan base for me sometimes. And I've grown up in Georgia. I love Larry Munson. But after a while, it's just like, look, we sometimes do focus so much on the negative that we can't figure out how things are positive. And that looking backwards on it, that was as decisive and as good a performance as I saw in college football on Saturday for 4 quarters. Now, Ohio State was about as hot as anybody in the first quarter. But that game became tighter. Oklahoma, same situation. I mean, is Houston good? You tell me.
They can score points.
I mean, are they better than Vanderbilt?
I think it could be a good game.
Right. And Oklahoma allowed 30 points. So I just, maybe it's the reporter in me who's been around this program for so long, and you're not used to seeing body types and, situations. But, Jordan Davis doesn't even stick out, man. I mean, he sticks out, but not like you might think he would on the practice field. You know what I'm saying? Well,
so let's talk about the defensive line. You said you wrote about him today. I mean, what about it? You said you were talking about the depth of it.
They just continue to roll guys through there, man. I mean, Tyler Clark doesn't look spectacular, and he's a really good player. Everything's relative. I mean, I've seen Zion Lowe to be developed into a really good player. I've seen him play live, and obviously, a lot of times I have a bias towards the players that I see play live, but I see really good players play live too at the same time. So that's part of it as well. But with Zion and like Zion Logue is not so far in terms of body type from Jordan Davis, and he's not so far from the other kid from Nashville, Central Tennessee area, is not so far from Walthour and oh god, the kid from Towers. They are similar, and like it just they really have done a hell of a job recruiting depth. They don't necessarily have a player who is so disruptive yet that you've noticed, but Jordan could become that in a way that national people will talk about him. You know what I mean?
Of course, and I think last season he just didn't have the time to build that up. But this year definitely has the potential to do so, and especially next year too. After another year, because I mean, he does just wreak havoc in the backfield. I think there was one play I remember at the Vanderbilt game. I think he made a mistake. Maybe went through the wrong gap, or maybe went a little too far upfield, but still made the play. I mean, he can wreak havoc in the backfield.
That's the other thing. I mean, I know people don't want to hear about Vanderbilt, but that's the other thing about their defensive line. It seemed to me I haven't watched the game 4 times. Only watched it twice. But like Georgia was standing their guys up and then moving them. Vanderbilt was standing up and either shooting gaps, running upfield. I mean, they were rolling the dice, and Georgia was making them pay. I don't know how many yards they wound up per carry. I know Zamir was at 10 yards a carry, and DeAndre was something at like 9. That is not going to work as a defender. They're just, you're just going to get eaten up. But again, I go back to Georgia's defensive line. If the kid that they played, he was the second team, he was the only second team running back in the SEC for the coaches. The other 3 were first team. One is DeAndre Swift, and the other 2 are at Alabama. I mean, so in theory, Dylan, that is the best running back Georgia's going to see this season outside of Notre Dame.
I'm trying to think of anyone else.
I'm sure Auburn will have a guy. I think the kid at Florida is not that bad. But damn, bro, if you don't have space to get, I think Vanderbilt's longest play was a 25-yard play, if memory serves correct. It wasn't unbelievable, whatever it was. The longest gain was the 16-yarder from Vaughn, where he got to the edge and kind of got outside. But what is very simple for people who are listening. I mean, I'm not sitting here like I'm a football expert, but it was almost impossible to run up the middle. And by the time that you got to the outside with the ball, Georgia's DBs and linebackers were hanging out, chilling, waiting to tackle you. That's basically what happened to Vanderbilt. They had 25 yards a quarter. That's about 10 yards on the ground each drive. That's not much.
That's not much at all.
That's not going to work.
A single first down.
That's a first down by run. Or 1 10-yard run, essentially. It's just not ideal. They had 116 yards rushing, 3 yards. I think 3 yards of rush. Now they didn't run it a lot, but they couldn't.
No, and no one has complained about Georgia's defense. I mean, I think they looked really solid. I think the only issue was the few penalties that they gave up.
Penalties were stupid, and I was talking to you or Matt or someone, Fletcher, and he just said, "Hey, don't you think that's the easiest type to clean up, or personal foul penalties on the defense?" I said, "Probably."
You would think so, because it's as simple as telling Dawg Wilson, "Hey, when he's running out of bounds, you don't need to hit him."
We were asking. I can't remember if I asked Walter Grant yesterday or if it was Quay Walker. I think it was Walter. Who said, I said, what are you thinking when that happens and you're a defender? He goes, "It's not a good feeling." Because as fast as those guys play, and they really do play fast, as an athlete to slow down. Because like in basketball, where you're going with the ball in your head instinctively. In tennis, you should just flip from forehand to backhand like it's nothing. And to stop where there's a giant white stripe and the bulk of a team right there, it's not that hard to do. and it's just super aggression, and it's a correctable mistake. And so I'm not going to get so, fired up talking about it because it is a completely correctable mistake. But it is something that they just can't continue to do.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And I think people will continue to make a kind of a big deal out of it, but it is something that, like you said, is easily correctable and just kind of dumb and youthful, I would say.
Youthful.
I
was thinking about this the other day because my basketball coach from college texted a group of us, and I remember him screaming at us when we were freshmen because my whole unit were freshman guys that played and signed that first year, and he would just scream at us that because several of that group played, not necessarily me, but he would just scream, either you're good young or you're bad young, and he would only scream that when we were bad young, by the way. But I don't know if he's right or not, because the more I think about it, like we had mistakes at Dawg Post the other day. I think sometimes it is an experience. You start overthinking things, but hitting guys late, that's just not something that can happen. And that was Wilson's second college football game, so I'm not going to be the guy that goes crazy.
And I think that might have just been a little bit of eagerness too on his end, just to finally get out there and get ready to hit someone. And he had a
secondary, I'm trying to think, man. The secondary did not get a lot of work. And that was on a special team? I feel like was on a special. No, one was Wilson, and the other one was Monty Rice ripping a guy's head off. I say the secondary didn't get a lot of work, but Mark Webb wound up with 7 tackles, which ain't bad. But then you got to go all the way down to number 5 tackler for the day was Richard at 4. So they just didn't get a lot of work back there, and it was a solid effort, man.
Well, because once again, I mean, Vanderbilt didn't throw the ball very well, so they didn't really get an opportunity much in that regard.
They didn't throw it well,
and then they hardly got to the second level when running the ball. So it was just like you said, it wasn't there.
That goes back to my defensive line, fantasy or whatever you want to call it. I might be overdoing it. But I'm just saying, when you get to the Auburn game, the Florida game, Notre Dame, Alabama, and I very seriously doubt Missouri, but when you are getting, when you have the nail and the hammer is hitting you in the head, how many more nails can you put there till the nail gets tired? I mean, that's what you want on a defensive line, is to prevent the hammering away of the nail. And for Vanderbilt, they could not stop. Georgia had like 6 hammers, and they were just pounding away all night long. They never could get a grip of the hammer, the ball, I was going to say the balls, but Vanderbilt never could get a hold of the hammer. I mean, Vanderbilt was one thing. Tennessee didn't even have a hammer on premise. They were getting popped in the face by Georgia State.
Yeah.
Well, and Brendan was telling me earlier, Brendan Kerner from Dawg Post, he was saying that the Vanderbilt press box was kind of exploded when that happened, when Tennessee lost.
Yeah, I mean, people were kind of like clamoring. They were kind of like, "Oh my God!" Like, there was definitely chatter. I mean, I wouldn't say people were like, "Yeah, like let's go," but they were like, everyone was kind of laughing and just shocked at what the hell was happening in Knoxville.
Yeah, it's bad news. All right, I got a roll here in Mexican. What should I get?
You got a what?
I got to get my Mexican on right now. What should I get?
You getting Mexican food?
Yeah.
Get some enchiladas, man. If you're sitting down, get a margarita too.
No, I gotta drive.
Well, doesn't mean you can't.
I've never made you a margarita, have I? I gotta get you a margarita.
I didn't know you made margaritas. I'm a big margarita fan.
We gotta get you some cookies and some margaritas.
Do you do them on the rocks or frozen?
For me, a margarita is only ever on the rocks. But I get it if you are a 40-year-old woman that you like a frozen margarita.
I prefer them on the rocks, but frozen is not bad either.
Yeah.
I don't think you should shit on them so hard.
No, I know. I should not really judge. First of all, margaritas are much better than I ever thought they were. But it's way you have to have something else in it. It can't just be like a margarita martini, for lack of a better term. Give me something else. Like, give me some flavor in the actual drink. Give me some spice. Don't go crazy. And I think you have to always have salt. If you don't have salt, I don't know if it's really a drink. But of course, with frozen, they're not going to have salt, are they?
No, you can get salt on them still, but it doesn't go as well.
Right.
But also,
But I always go ahead.
at La Fiesta, if you get the frozen one, you get more margaritas. The thing on the rocks, they don't give you as much in the pitcher.
I'll say, man, you and I both know. Now, they are not sponsors of the program, but La Fiesta on the east side, that is not bad.
They have my Texan stamp of approval. They barely pass, but they get it.
They barely pass.
Talak on the perimeter also passes.
So much competition out there in Dylan's world of Mexican, Athens Mexican.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey to find some half-decent Mexican food. And
is it Mexican or Tex-Mex?
It's Tex-Mex, but I call it Mexican. I think they're the same thing. I think Tex-Mex has kind of taken over Mexican food.
Yeah, I was going to say, almost everything in America is Tex-Mex, which is not quite the same thing as Mexican.
No, not at all. Like chips and queso is a very Tex-Mex thing, but I would lump that into my category of Mexican food.
Is that cheese dip?
I mean, let's just end it here then, you asshole. We're not getting into this.
I feel like we should end riding off before I lose control of the car.
Or before I start using more expletives.
That's true. We got to get you a margarita so you can calm down. All right, join us over on the website, dawgpost.com, dawgpost.com. We'll see you over on the website.